Last week we heard how Bobby Darin had become one of the hottest tickets in Las Vegas and how his marriage to Sandra Dee became a show business event. As the world moved into the second half of the 60s, Darin began the most turbulent part of his life and career. I say life and career separately, but as you'll have gathered, these things were inextricably linked. The folk music, which had begun to make an appearance in his 1962 shows, now began to have a more central role. He recorded several songs with a stronger lyrical content.
Back as far as 1954 or 5, I have been a folk enthusiast, so to speak. And if you go back to the first record, which I hope you won't, the first couple of 3, in fact, in 56, they were folk-natured, commercial adaptations of old folk songs. And so when that didn't happen, you see, I was about 6 years ahead of the time, I kind of went on to a different style, so to speak. But the love for folk music has always been there. Well, the album is called Golden Folk Hits. I would say that every day when a headline appears in a paper, grounds are broken for a future folk song. And, of course, Blowing in the Wind, the fella that wrote it, I don't know if you know anything about Bob Dylan. Young fella, about 21 years old, a very sensitive boy who feels that certain things should be set down in musical terms these days.
How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? And how many seas must a white dove sail before he sleeps in the sand? And how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a mountain exist before it is washed in the sea? And how many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? And how many times can a man turn his head pretending he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man lose?
Around this time he made his best movies, Hell is for Heroes, Pressure Point and Captain Newman MD, for which he received an Oscar nomination in 1964. He didn't win, the winner was Melvyn Douglas, but it meant a tremendous amount to him to be nominated. Screenwriter, playwright and Darin fan David Kane.
I have, really high regard for him as an actor. 2 main reasons. One is he was very naturalistic, he handled dialogue well. He had a very distinctive speaking voice, which all good actors, all successful actors usually have. And he was very comfortable in front of the camera and very confident. A lot of the films that he did make, a lot of them were very kind of mainstream and very formulaic. But there were a few that he made that showed how seriously he took acting. Obviously, I would say Too Late Blues and Captain Newman MD, Pressure Point, Hell is for Heroes. And, for a guy who was known at the time as a singer, not an actor, it's very impressive.
He returned to Atlantic Records and was introduced to the songs of John Sebastian and Tim Hardin by the publisher-producers Charles Koppelman and Don Rubin. This led to one of his most enduring records, his version of Tim Hardin's If I Were a Carpenter.
If I were a carpenter and you were a a lady, would you marry me anyway? Would you have my baby? If a tinker were my trade, would you still find me carrying the pots I made, following behind me? Save my love through loneliness, save my love for sorrow. I've given you my onlyness, come and give me your tomorrow. If I work my hands in wood, would you still love me? Answer me, baby, yes I would. I'll put you above me. If I were a miller at a mill wheel grinding, would you miss your color box, your soft shoes shining? If I were a carpenter and you were a lady, would you marry me anyway? Would you have my baby? Would you marry me anyway? Would you have my baby?
It's fair to say his version of this song has become the definitive one, with that bass line, arranged by Darin himself, making an appearance on nearly every rendition since. All those who worked with or saw Darin in the studio agree he was a meticulous professional who knew what he wanted. Biographer Jeff Blyle.
He had a vision to do all these different things and to be an all-around, you can't pigeonhole me kind of entertainer. And it did come through in you know, his taking control of his own recordings. I mean, he was, Nick Vinay pointed out that, you know, basically any record that came out that said produced by, you know, it was co-produced by Bobby Darin. He was the guy in charge, and he was very involved in his arrangements also.
If you are wondering what I'm gonna do while you are sleeping, am I sleeping too? Well, I'm just sitting here loving you, close my eyes and loving you. I'm just sitting back, sitting here loving you. I have been wondering just what I would do if I weren't sleeping, had I not found you. I'd be outside finding you, walking on the avenue finding you. Well, I'm just sitting back, sitting here loving you. Now the reason that you never see me running around, fingers on my forehead couldn't calm me down. She can't even get me up on my feet. When I got to take care of some business on the street, I have been walking on my streets alone. I would keep walking to keep from going home. I couldn't quite barely conceive of you. Now I can't conceive of ever leaving you, 'cause I'm just sitting back, sitting here loving you. I have been walking on my streets alone. I could keep walking to keep from going home. I couldn't quite barely conceive of you. Now I can't conceive of ever leaving you, 'cause I'm just sitting back, sitting here loving you. I'm just sitting back, sitting here loving you. I'm just sitting back, sitting here loving you.
His marriage to Sandra Dee had been in trouble for a while and finally ended in divorce in 1967. Manager Steve Blauner.
I mean, we had an office, but I'd end up going to the house every day, and two things. One, I noticed how whenever I'd go over, we'd get into a business conversation, and Sandy would glaze over. The other thing was that I never was at the house for any period of time when Sandy's mother didn't appear or was there. And Sandy, that's another thing Bobby kept from me. After Bobby died, I bumped into someone that we'd both known, I hadn't seen for a long time, and he told me that Bobby would call him up, or at least this one time called him up and said, "Get a limo, Sandy's gone, we got to go find Sandy. And don't tell Steve." He didn't want me to know he was having those kind of problems. I mean, she was off someplace in a bar drinking.
British fans had a rare chance to see him on a BBC TV special, where he proved himself to be a terrific all-round performer, not the least of his talents being that of stand-up comedian.
And ever since I was, about yay high, of which I'm not much higher now that I look at it, I always wanted to go to the town of Hollywood just so I could see all the famous motion picture stars. And I'm sure if everybody in the audience wanted to be honest, you'd all admit that at one time in your lives, you want to do the same thing. So we'd like to take you on an imaginary trip with a fellow who comes from a town like Peoria. Town's empty, eh? He takes himself a champagne flight into Los Angeles, gets off the plane, and expects to see all the motion picture stars at the airport just hanging around. Of course, there's nobody there, so he checks into a motel and then wanders into a Hollywood saloon with the very strange title of the Stars Bar. He figures sooner or later somebody from the picture world is going to walk in there. Unfortunately, nobody does. Now, you have to bear in mind the fact that this poor fella's taking himself a champagne flight. So he's feeling a little good. Hey, bartender, I'll drink to that. Isn't it supposed to be the Stars Bar while the celebrities hang up? Out? I'll drink to that. Well, where is everybody? What, are they too stuck up to have a drink with just a regular guy from Peoria? Galporia? Where I just came from? I'll drink to that. Oh, look what you got up on the wall. Everybody's pictographed ornament. How come you don't got nobody here personally? I'm just as good as they are. And a darn sight worse. I'll drink to that. Big deal, all those people in Hollywood. Big deal, I could be anybody one of them if I want to be. I could be anybody in the whole world if I want to be. You better believe it. It's 2:45, Junko. There's nobody in this place, huh? Except you and me. You and me. Us. So I want you to stick him up. I want you to set him up, Joe. I got a little story. I thought I had a sneeze. My friend Cary Grant is going to tell it to you. Cary? No, I say, bartender, we're drinking, my friend, right up to the end of a brief episode, so I don't want to hear any of your lip. Notice when I walk into a room, my shoulders follow me by 3 feet. So I'll make it one for my baby and one more for my good friend Marlon Brandi. Brandu. Brandy, that's it.
I'm Mark Lamar, and you're listening to the Bobby Darin Story on Radio 2. From his initial participation in civil rights demonstrations, he became more and more politically involved. In particular, he played a part in the team working for the presidential campaign of Robert Kennedy.
That's true. He became very committed to the candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy, and that, of course, was the height of the dissension in America about the Vietnam War, and the civil rights struggle was still there. And Bobby Darin saw Robert F. Kennedy as someone who could heal the country, bring some racial harmony, perhaps end the war, and he became very committed to Kennedy and Kennedy's campaign.
Jeff Blyle.
Darin would sing on the campaign trail. He would and this is the time where he was actually so far away from Bobby Darin, Vegas, Hollywood entertainer. He would just come out with an acoustic guitar and sing a song or two, more or less to kind of open a rally or to be part of the prelude of the rally to the political speech. He wasn't a big star. He was just a working musician and a working singer trying to move forward the cause.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. And if I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out a warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. And if I had a song, I'd sing in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing out a warning, I'd sing out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Now I have a hammer, and I got a bell, and I got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's the song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. It's the hammer of justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's the song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
He sold his publishing company, TM Music, which had by now acquired nearly all his back catalogue copyrights, to Commonwealth United for $1 million worth of Commonwealth stock. He thought it was a great deal. Steve Blauner thought otherwise.
He makes a deal. He calls me on the phone, and I wasn't managing him then, and he says, I just got $1 million worth of stock in this company for my publishing company. He'd be calling me every day. It's $1.2 million, it's $1.4 million, it's $1.3 million, it's $1 million, and I went out and checked out on the company, and I called Bobby up, and I said, Bobby, sell your stock. What are you talking about? It's $1.4 million. I said, Bobby, it's just a matter of time till they go under. They think they know how to make movies. Well, he wouldn't have gotten rid of his stock. I know Bobby. But what he didn't tell me was he couldn't have gotten rid of it anyhow. When a lot of those deals that you make, when you get stock, you have to keep them for a certain amount of time. Well, it ended up that they went under. Unfortunately, I was right. And he lost it all. And till the day he died, he was trying to get it back, but it was sold at auction. So he lost all his copyrights.
Darin was performing at a new supper club, Mr. D's, in San Francisco, when he heard the news of Robert Kennedy's assassination. This was indeed a major event for the world, but for Darin it was a deeply personal blow, one which he never really got over.
He's a ruthless opportunist, and he motivates by greed. He's just the way his father was, and that we sure don't need. So they all cried out, destroy him, for he wants to see us drowned. They never understood him, so they put him in the ground. Now some had stood for hours, and some sat on the grass, listening to their radios for where the train had passed. And a crowd will get impatient As the clock hands turn around, they never understood him, so they put him in the ground. They handed out some candles to the somber, weary crowd and told us not to light them till our eyes beheld the shroud. Not even at that moment could there be tranquility. I could feel them push and argue. Hey, sit down, I cannot see. They never understood him, so they put him in the ground.
He formed his own record label, Direction, grew a little moustache, removed his toupee, and began to refer to himself as Bob Darin. Here's John Peel.
He did do those solo LPs of a kind of moody singer-songwriter variety, which I played quite a bit. Well, the first one, it was on Direction Records, and the second was on Bell Records. Actually, no, Direction Records was part of Bell Records, so both on Bell Records. The first one was from 1968, and was called Bobby Darin, born Casotto. Actually, it says born Walden Robert Casotto. And I played quite a few tracks from this when it came out, because it was quite good, and because it was very much of its time. Well, by the time he did the second one, he'd become simple, plain Bob Darin, just one of the guys. And by this, he'd got long hair and a moustache and stuff like that. He certainly wasn't a smooth supper club entertainer. I think he was a tormented genius at this stage in his career.
In 1969, Darin returned to the Copa with a four-piece band. It was an exceptionally small lineup for a top-notch cabaret show. Among the songs he sang was the self-composed Long Line Rider.
Wetting it down, boss, wet it down. Wiping it off, boss, wipe it off.
The song tells of the prison situation featured in the Robert Redford movie Brubaker.
To win 10 to 20 hard, swinging 12 pounds in the yard every day, every day. I came in with a group of 20, there ain't left but half as many in the clay, in the clay. Long line rider, turn away. There's a farm in Arkansas, got some secrets in its floor, in decay, in decay. You can tell where they're at, nothing grows, the ground is flat, where they lay, where they lay. Long line rider, turn away. All the records show so clear, not a single man was here anyway, anyway. That's the tale the warden tells as he counts his empty shells by the day, by the day. Hey, long line rider, turn away. There's a funny taste in the air, big bulldozers everywhere, digging clay, turning clay. And the ground coughs up some roots, wearing denim shirts and boots. Haul 'em away, haul 'em away. Hey, long line rider, turn away. Well, I heard a brother moan, why they plowing up my home in this way, in this way. I said, buddy, shake your gloom, they're just here to make more room in the clay, USA.
Next week we'll hear how he dealt with the aftermath of Robert Kennedy's assassination and how a small piece of forgetfulness had devastating consequences. It's appropriate this week to finish with the track from his Christmas album.
If anybody asked you who I am, who I am, who I am. If anybody asked you who I am, tell them I'm a child of God. Peace on the earth, Mary, rock of the cradle, rock of the cradle, rock of the cradle. peace on earth, a merry rock of the cradle, Christ child born in glory. If anybody asks you who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks you who I am, tell him I'm a child of God. The little cradle rocks tonight in glory, tonight in glory, tonight in glory. The little cradle rocks tonight in glory, Christ child born in glory. If anybody asks you who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks you who I am, tell him I'm a child of God. Do you believe he was born in a stable, born in a stable, born in a stable? Do you believe he was born in a stable, Christ child born in glory? If anybody asks you who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks you who I am, tell him I'm a child of God. Now repeat it once. If anybody asks you who I am, who I am, who I am, if anybody asks you who I am, tell him I'm a child of God. Keep on telling him. Tell him I'm a child of God. Keep telling him. Tell him I'm a child of God. I mean, tell him I'm a child of God.
This is Mark Lamar and the Bobby Darin Story on Radio 2. The researchers were Grant Campbell and Mark Hutton, and the programme was compiled and produced by Robert Noakes of Neon Productions.